Mara Collins had perfected the art of disappearing into the background as a maid in Prince Zayd Al Farouk's Dubai palace. But the day his fiancée dared her to try on a crimson gown, everything shifted. They thought they were making a harmless joke about a servant's body, something to entertain bored aristocrats. In a hall of marble and chandeliers, they didn't know Mara once breathed life into fabric, or that humiliation could spark a revolution. The woman they mocked as excess and invisible help still carried the instincts of a designer they'd never recognize. Their cruelty struck tinder against dry kindling, and by the time they realized who Mara Collins truly was, the fire would already be raging. Morning sunlight poured over Dubai's skyline, gilding glass towers and shimmering off the palace's marble floors. Inside the grand ballroom, servants glided like quiet ghosts, polishing crystal, ironing linens, and aligning chairs with military precision for Prince Zayd's engagement banquet. Crystal flutes chimed softly as they were arranged on velvet-draped tables. Nothing less than flawlessness would satisfy this household. At 36, Mara had learned to move silently, shrinking herself into corners, existing like a shadow no one bothered to notice. Her deep brown skin gleamed under ornate chandeliers, and her uniform clung awkwardly to her generous curves. The other staff whispered full-figured with kindness, but Mara preferred real, in a world obsessed with angles, filters, and impossible silhouettes carved by money. "Careful with that display, Mara," Yusuf called from across the room. The head butler's voice carried authority, softened by genuine warmth. He was one of the few who looked her in the eye and saw a person instead of moving furniture. Mara nodded and turned toward the evening centerpiece, a breathtaking crimson satin gown suspended on a golden mannequin beneath a spotlight. The dress seemed almost alive, the fabric flowing like molten rubies. She recognized the label instantly. Italian, exclusive, terrifyingly expensive. Her pulse jumped. Years ago, she'd sketched imitations of brands like this, when she still ran a tiny studio and believed talent and grit were enough. That felt like another lifetime. A dream sewn shut. Her fingertips trembled as she smoothed the train. The craftsmanship was astonishing, but as she adjusted a fold around the waist, she noticed a tiny flaw, a nearly invisible split in the seam. The imperfection startled her. Even here, in a kingdom of excess, perfection was still an illusion stitched together. "Step away from the dress, Maid." The voice sliced through the air like a blade. Mara turned to see Lena Haddad gliding into the ballroom, designer heels ticking against marble. Prince Zayd's fiancée wore a sculpted white sheath that probably equaled Mara's yearly salary. Lena's dark hair was twisted into a flawless chignon, diamonds dripping from her ears and collarbones like captured stars. Behind her came Prince Zayd himself, surrounded by immaculately dressed guests. At 42, he wore his power like a custom suit, effortless, expensive. "Zayd, look at my dress," Lena trilled, gesturing toward the crimson gown. "Isn't it divine? He spent a fortune on it. Tell them, Habibi, tell them what you paid." Zayd flashed a lazy smile. "Enough to fund a village for months." Laughter rippled through the group. Mara continued polishing glasses, trying to become invisible, but Lena clearly had other plans. "You," Lena called, sugary venom coating her tone. "The plump one. Yes, you. Do you own a mirror, or did those go out of style?" Mara's hands stilled. Hot embarrassment crawled up her neck as every gaze landed on her. She forced her expression into calm neutrality, the mask she'd perfected over years. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she managed, voice steady even as her stomach lurched. "A mirror," Lena repeated slowly, like explaining basics to a child. "You know, the thing people use before stepping outside? Or do you skip that entire ritual?" Nervous giggles scattered through the room. Zaid's smile sharpened, clearly entertained by the spectacle. Mara's chest tightened, but she kept her posture upright. "I apologize if my appearance offends, ma'am," she said quietly. Lena laughed. "A brittle sound like breaking glass." "Offends? Oh no, darling. You don't offend me. You distract me, and I'm bored." She turned theatrically to the crowd. "I've had the most brilliant idea. Someone should try on my engagement gown. We must ensure it fits perfectly." Her heels clicked closer until she stood inches from Mara. Expensive perfume wrapping around them both. "You should try it on," Lena murmured sweetly. "We must confirm the sizing, and clearly, you could use a taste of glamour." The room went silent. Mara's heart pounded. This had nothing to do with tailoring, and everything to do with cruelty. "I don't believe that would be appropriate, ma'am," Mara answered, fighting to keep her voice level. "Don't be shy," Lena insisted loudly. "I dare you!" Prince Zaid stepped forward, amusement glittering in his eyes. "Now, this I'd like to see. Go ahead." He paused, then added with a careless laugh, "If she can squeeze into that dress, I'll marry her myself." The ballroom erupted. Guests doubled over, wiping tears from their eyes. Even some servants forced shaky smiles, afraid silence might be punished. Mara stood rooted in place, her cheeks burning. Behind her, the crimson gown loomed like a taunting monument to everything she'd lost. Her studio, her confidence, her place in the world. "Such generosity, Your Highness," someone called. "But I suspect your fortune's safe." Mara curved her lips into a ghost of a smile. Crying would only crown their joke. "You're very kind, sir," she said softly, "but I should return to my work." Yusuf appeared beside her, as if summoned by prayer. "Indeed, we're behind schedule," he said. "If you'll excuse us," he added smoothly, guiding Mara toward the service corridor with a steady hand. Behind them, Lena's voice rang out, "What a shame! I'd have loved to watch that zipper beg for mercy." More laughter chased them down the hall. In the quiet corridor, Yusuf stopped. His weathered face was etched with concern. "Don't let them shatter you," he said gently. "People like that weigh worth in carats, and forget that character is priceless." "I'm fine," Mara lied. Her voice quivered. "No, you're not," he replied softly. "And that's allowed." He squeezed her shoulder, then walked away, leaving her alone with the echo of laughter and the sharp sting of humiliation clinging to her like dust she couldn't quite brush off. That evening, after her shift, Mara walked through Dubai's glittering streets toward her cramped apartment in the old quarter. Glass towers pierced the sky, their lights pulsing with wealth. Luxury cars slid by, air-conditioned bubbles that never noticed the tired maid. Tonight, invisibility felt like relief. When she finally reached her modest one-bedroom, she collapsed onto the sagging sofa. Her feet throbbed, her back ached, but worst was the heaviness in her chest, the familiar ache of dreams deferred and dignity bruised. She reached under the couch and pulled out a weathered leather portfolio, its edges softened by years of handling. Inside lay sketches, dozens of them, evening gowns, sharp suits, playful streetwear, bridal fantasies. Each design was a ghost of a life interrupted. Her fingertip traced the curved lines of a dress she'd designed 6 years earlier. back when she'd still rented a tiny studio in the arts district, believing late nights and raw talent could outrun bad luck and ruthless landlords forever. Then rent skyrocketed. Her biggest client folded, taking months of unpaid work with them. Bills piled higher than fabric rolls, and eventually the studio door closed. Her dreams had unraveled stitch by stitch, like a hem left too long in friction. Her phone buzzed. Nadia's name lit the screen. Her younger sister, somehow always calling at the exact moment Mara's spirit hovered near. Breaking. "Hey, big sis," Nadia chirped. "Just checking on you. How was today?" Mara hesitated, then chose honesty over deflection. "They laughed at me," she said quietly. "The prince's fiancé dared me to try on her engagement dress. He joked he'd marry me if I fit. Everyone thought it was hilarious." Silence stretched, heavy and hot. Then Nadia's voice sharpened. "Those people are hollow," Nadia snapped. "They collect things, not souls. They have everything except what counts." Mara swallowed. "It still hurts," she admitted. "I know," Nadia said, softer now. "But listen, nothing painful in your life is wasted, not if you refuse. Every tear waters seeds you can't see yet," Nadia continued. "One day you'll look back and understand why this had to happen." Mara closed her eyes, letting the words settle like balm on raw skin. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "Then decide to," Nadia replied. "You're not just a maid, Mara. You're a designer who happens to clean palaces right now. There's a difference." After they hung up, Mara walked to the bathroom mirror and really confronted her reflection for once. She'd gained weight since losing the studio. Stress and cheap food had carved soft edges where muscles used to be. Her uniform hung tired and faded. Shadows pooled under her eyes. But beneath exhaustion, she still recognized the girl who'd sewn at 13. The young woman who'd once believed she could change lives with fabric and thread stared back at her. "If they want to laugh," Mara murmured to the mirror, "let them. They won't forever." She didn't yet know how prophetic that quiet promise was. The next morning, Dubai woke bright and ruthless as ever. Mara reported for her shift, body heavy but mind oddly alert. As she polished cutlery in the butler's pantry, voices drifted from the next room. Lena's high laugh and her friend's syrupy chatter. "The wedding will be flawless," Lena announced. "And absolutely maid-free. No servants lurking in the background, ruining aesthetic in photos. After the ceremony, I'm firing most of them, starting with that chubby one from yesterday." Laughter blossomed like poison. The words slammed into Mara. She'd always known service jobs were fragile, but hearing her future dismissed so casually, like clearing clutter, ignited something sharp and clean inside her. Not rage exactly, determination. A quiet, steady refusal to end as their punchline. She finished the day on autopilot, then walked home with a different weight in her steps. That night, standing in her tiny kitchen, she made a decision. Revenge would keep her tethered to them. Reinvention would set her free. She chose herself. She dug out her old sketches again, then reached into the back of her closet for a pair of worn running shoes from a failed fitness phase years earlier. Tomorrow, she decided, wouldn't just be another day. Tomorrow would mark a beginning. At 4:30 a.m., she woke before her alarm. She laced the sneakers with shaking hands and stepped into the stairwell of her 6-story building, no elevator, concrete echoing her footsteps. She started climbing up and down, legs burning by the second trip. By the 5th, sweat streamed down her face and her lungs burned like fire, but she refused to stop. Each step was a silent protest against every insult, every smug laugh, every moment she'd swallowed her anger to keep a paycheck. When she finally collapsed against the railing, chest heaving, she felt something she hadn't tasted in years: pride. At the palace, she volunteered for the heaviest tasks. Laundry baskets became weights. Stair runs delivering trays became sprints. Work turned into training. Yusuf noticed after a week. One evening, as Mara lifted a linen hamper usually carried by 2 people, he intercepted her. "You'll injure yourself," he warned, though curiosity brightened his eyes. "I'm all right," she said, setting it down with only mild strain. He studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "The royal kitchen always has extra food. Grilled fish, vegetables, grains. It would be tragic to waste it." He glanced at her. "You might check the staff fridge after your shift." No further explanation. That night, Mara opened the staff refrigerator to find labeled containers waiting: herbed salmon, roasted vegetables, bright quinoa salads. Real fuel, not instant noodles. She ate slowly at her tiny table, flavor and gratitude tangling until tears burned her eyes. Unexpected kindness, she realized, could crack your heart open in the gentlest way. Weeks passed. Palace routines stayed rigid. But Mara shifted. Her clothes loosened. Breathing grew easier. Stairs no longer mocked her. They yielded. One quiet afternoon, she found herself in the library. Dusting shelves, she slipped a scrap of paper from her pocket and started sketching almost without thinking. Lines flowed into the shape of a gown, elegant, commanding, meant for a woman who knew her worth and refused to apologize for taking space. She was so consumed by the drawing she didn't hear footsteps until a voice spoke behind her. "You a designer?" Mara jolted, nearly dropping her pencil. Prince Zaid stood in the doorway, tie loosened, whiskey glass in hand, expression faintly amused. "I didn't mean to disturb you, sir," she stammered, instinctively trying to shield the sketch. But he'd already seen it. He stepped closer, gaze fixed on the page. "Let me see," he said. Her heartbeat thudded. This was the man who'd laughed at her pain. He took the paper, studying it. "Interesting," he said at last, tone edged with mockery. "You draw pretty pictures. Do you actually believe you could be a designer?" Mara lifted her chin. "I was one, once," she said quietly. "Maybe I will be again." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe respect, but vanished quickly. He handed the sketch back. "Everyone has dreams, I suppose," he said lightly. "Even maids." Then he walked away, leaving Mara with shaking hands and a drawing that suddenly mattered more. That night she told Nadia about the encounter. "He's rattled," Nadia said thoughtfully. "People like him don't know what to do when someone refuses to stay small." "I'm not trying to challenge him," Mara protested. "Just existing challenges him," Nadia replied. "There's a local artisan showcase coming up," Nadia added. "Sponsored by some big fashion investors. I think Zaid's holding company is involved. You should enter." Mara's stomach clenched. "I can't. If I fail, they're right. If I succeed, I risk everything." "Then use a pseudonym," Nadia suggested. "Let your work speak without your name getting in the way." The idea planted itself in Mara's mind. A secret identity, a way to test her wings while still keeping her day job and dignity safe. "MC Atelier," she whispered, tasting the name. "That's what I'd call it." Nadia laughed. "Perfect. Then do it, sis. Show them what you can do." Over the next 2 weeks, Mara stole every free moment to sketch, refine, and dream in fabric again. But paper wasn't enough. She needed a real piece. She began salvaging discarded materials from the palace laundry. A length of silk with a stain easily cut away, satin scraps, lace trims Lena had scorned as too ordinary. Trash to them. Treasure to her. Late at night in her apartment, sewing machine. Humming, Mara stitched. Her hands remembered. She turned leftovers and rejects into something new. Meanwhile, Lena's cruelty escalated at work, as if sensing the shift in Mara's spine, the newfound stubborn lift of her chin. "You're slower than usual," Lena snapped one afternoon, though Mara moved faster than most. "Perhaps too many sweets." The old Mara would have apologized. The new Mara simply said, "I'll keep working, ma'am," and continued. That quiet refusal enraged Lena more than arguments. Punishments followed, pointless scrubbing, repolishing, reorganizing rooms already immaculate. Mara did everything without complaint, treating each task as training. Her body grew stronger. Her mind sharpened. One exhausting night she collapsed on her bed, fully dressed, muscles screaming and hands raw from chemicals. The temptation to give up clawed at her. In the dark, she whispered Zaid's taunt aloud, "If she can fit in that dress, I'll marry her." The memory no longer sliced. It fueled her. She dragged herself to the mirror and looked hard. Her face was leaner now, cheekbones more defined. Her body was changing, yes, but something deeper had shifted. She was remembering the version of herself who didn't apologize for having a vision. The next day, a plain white envelope appeared in her mailbox. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Congratulations, MC Atelier. Your submission has been shortlisted for the Artisan Showcase. Please present your work on March 15th. She read it 3 times. It still didn't change. Her design, chosen, her dream, not dead. She sank onto the sofa and sobbed, not from despair this time, but from relief and wild, fragile hope. "Thank you," she whispered, to whatever force had given her this chance. She glanced at the burgundy fabric draped over her sewing table like a promise. Her reinterpretation of Lena's gown had taken shape. Same sweeping silhouette, same dramatic presence, but woven with her story instead of Lena's ego. Mara Collins was no longer only the maid mocked by a prince. She was an artist inching back toward her voice. She tucked the acceptance letter into her pillowcase, fingertips brushing it each morning like a talisman. The exhibition was 3 weeks away. She had no idea how she'd attend without risking her job, but faith sometimes meant stepping onto stairs you couldn't see. What she didn't know was that her submission was already stirring conversation in glass-walled offices high above Dubai Marina. 3 judges reviewed entries, including Marcus Whittaker, a British fashion consultant overseeing investments for Zaid's portfolio. He held Mara's photo up thoughtfully. "This piece from MC Atelier is extraordinary," Marcus said. "Perfect craftsmanship. But more importantly, it feels lived in emotionally, like the fabric remembers something." Another judge frowned. "Anonymous, no portfolio, just this one garment." "Sometimes," Marcus replied, "one garment is enough." The judges agreed to shortlist it. Within days, the names went live online. During a bathroom break, Mara saw MC Atelier nestled among powerful brands and backed designers. Her breath hitched. She was actually competing in their world. Whether they liked it or not, designers had to attend in person, set up displays, speak to judges and guests. Mara needed an entire day off, something she'd never requested in almost 3 years. That evening, she approached Yusuf, who was studying schedules with his glasses perched low. "Sir, I need to ask a favor," she began, voice steady despite her nerves. "I'd like March 15th off, the entire day. It's for family, a sick relative." The lie tasted bitter. The truth felt too tender to expose to palace air. Yusuf watched her for a long moment, seeing more than she said. Finally, he nodded. "Family comes first. I'll mark it as personal leave." "Thank you," she breathed. "Mara," he added, removing his glasses, expression serious. "Whatever you're doing, I hope it brings peace." She realized he knew she was lying, and chose to cover for her anyway. That quiet trust almost undid her. For 3 weeks, Mara lived 2 lives. By day, Lena's overworked maid; by night, the invisible designer shaping a dress from scraps and stubbornness. She transformed Lena's crimson fantasy into something richer. A deep burgundy gown cut from repurposed satin, overlaid with lace salvaged from discarded curtains. She hand-embroidered the bodice with beads plucked one by one from broken costume jewelry tossed by palace guests. The result was a dress humming with quiet power, stitched from things the wealthy deemed worthless. It whispered, "You don't need money to make beauty." The night before the showcase, Nadia arrived with a garment bag, a small makeup kit, and fierce determination. "You're walking into that venue with your head high," Nadia insisted, pressing the gown one last time. "You're not just MC Atelier, you're Mara Collins, and you're brilliant. Promise me you'll stand like it." "What if they laugh?" Mara asked hoarsely. "Then they're fools," Nadia said simply. "You've been crammed into small spaces so long, you forgot your real size. Tomorrow, you remember." Mara barely slept, rehearsing answers to imagined questions. Every scenario ended with someone recognizing her as Zaid's maid. Morning arrived anyway. The exhibition took place in Dubai Design District, inside a converted warehouse flooded with natural light. Mara checked in under her pseudonym, hands shaking, then followed the organizer, Beth, to a simple white booth with a table and dress form. "You have 2 hours to set up," Beth explained. "Judges circulate all day. Public voting tonight. Good luck." Around Mara, designers unpacked professional lighting, glossy lookbooks, branded signage, screens playing cinematic promo videos. She had her dress, a hand-lettered sign, and Nadia's wildflowers. She dressed the mannequin carefully, smoothing the burgundy satin until it caught the light like embers. The lace overlay added depth. The beadwork shimmered quietly at neckline and cuffs. It wasn't the flashiest piece in the room, but it had a heartbeat. At 10 o'clock, doors opened. Fashion students, influencers, buyers, and curious locals drifted through the space. Mara stood by her booth, pretending confidence while her stomach knotted. Some people skimmed past. Others paused, fingers grazing the hem, eyes lingering on the bodice. "What's your brand philosophy?" a young woman asked, notebook ready. Turning overlooked things into something unforgettable, Mara replied, finding beauty in what others throw away. An older man in expensive shoes studied the beadwork closely. "All hand-stitched?" "Every bead," Mara answered. "Impressive patience," he murmured. As the hours passed, more visitors lingered at her booth, snapping photos, whispering emotional and unexpected. Then Marcus approached. Mara recognized him from the judge's photo. Tall, silver hair, sharp eyes. "MC Atelier," he said, offering his hand. "I'm Marcus. This is outstanding." "Thank you, sir," she replied, swallowing her nerves. "Tell me about your process," he said. "Your materials. Where did they come from?" Mara weighed honesty. Would scraps reduce her in their eyes or underline her ethos? "I work with discarded textiles," she said finally. "These fabrics were headed for the trash. I gave them another story." Marcus's eyes lit. "Upcycling with taste, excellent. The industry's drowning in waste. We need more voices like yours." He studied the embroidery. "Formal training." "Self-taught," she said. "I had a studio once. Life intervened." "Life always does," he said gently. "What matters is what we build from the rubble." He scribbled notes, asked a few more questions, then moved on, but glanced back twice, as if reassessing her booth. By late afternoon, Mara's public votes had surged. She overheard strangers calling her work emotional, honest. The dress that makes all the others look slightly empty. Hope flickered brighter. Then the door opened, and Lena walked in, flanked by two impeccably dressed friends, shopping bags swinging from their wrists. Mara's blood chilled. Lena strolled between booths like browsing a boutique. "Oh, look at this one," she said, stopping at Mara's display, not recognizing her. "So quaint, like something from a charity vintage sale." Her friends giggled. One leaned closer, eyeing the gown. "Is this supposed to be upcycled or just cheap?" the blonde friend asked. "Is there a difference?" Lena scoffed, earning more laughter. Mara kept her eyes lowered, praying Lena wouldn't really look at her. Today, her hair and clothes were different, but still. "The beadwork's actually lovely," the third woman admitted reluctantly. "Please," Lena said. "Anyone with enough free time can stitch. Real design is about vision, not just nimble fingers." She leaned in to read the sign. MC Atelier, never heard of them. Probably some girl from the slums trying to crash real fashion, Lena added lightly. The words punched through Mara, but she stayed still. After what felt like hours, Lena and her entourage drifted away, their laughter dissolving into the general hum of voices. Mara exhaled slowly. To Lena, poverty neighborhoods were just slums, faceless and distant. Yet the gown on that mannequin proved those same streets could birth beauty. That hand scrubbed raw by cleaning could still create art. Evening arrived, and judges gathered near the stage. Beth took the microphone. "Thank you for joining us at this year's showcase," she announced. "We've seen remarkable work from established houses and emerging talents. Our winner embodies innovation, sustainability, and emotional depth." Mara's fingers twisted together. Winning shouldn't matter. It absolutely did. "This year's winner is MC Atelier." The room erupted. For a second, Mara's brain refused the words. "MC?" Beth called. "Are you here?" Nadia's voice echoed in Mara's memory. "Remember your size." Mara raised her hand. "I'm here," she called, voice shaking. The crowd parted as she walked toward the stage, each step thick like wading through water. Beth handed her a small trophy and an envelope. "Congratulations. Care to tell us about yourself?" The microphone felt heavy. Mara looked out over the sea of faces. Designers with thousands invested in their displays, industry powerhouses, and somewhere in the crowd, Lena, who'd called her work slum fashion. "My name is Mara Collins," she said, voice gaining strength. "I'm a self-taught designer. I believe fashion should be accessible, sustainable, and honest." She gestured toward the gown. "This dress is my manifesto. That beauty doesn't require wealth, only imagination and persistence." Applause rose. Marcus met her gaze and nodded approvingly. As she stepped down, people swarmed her with business cards, compliments, offers. A boutique owner asked to stock her pieces. A fashion blogger begged for an interview. A textile company representative offered to donate eco-friendly fabrics. Mara accepted cards with trembling hands, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from invisible maid to sought-after artist in one evening. The exhibition ended at 9. She packed the gown, trophy, and stack of contacts into her bag. As she headed for the exit, her phone buzzed. Yusuf's name lit the screen. "Mara, where are you?" he asked, voice taut. "There's a bad sandstorm coming." She glanced outside. The sky had turned an eerie orange-brown. Wind whipped grit across the parking lot. "I'm at the design district," she said. "I think I can get home before—" "No!" Yusuf interrupted. "It's moving fast. Find shelter nearby. The palace is on lockdown." She joined the crowd being directed to the building's reinforced basement. Emergency supplies, water, blankets, battery lanterns were already laid out. She curled into a corner, gown beside her, listening to the wind roar overhead. Nothing about this day had gone as planned. Thankfully, across town, the storm slammed into the palace. Windows rattled, sand pelted the glass like furious rain, exterior doors were sealed. Inside, a skeleton crew, Yusuf, a few servants, and a temp in Mara's place, secured anything loose and prepped rooms for stranded guests. Zaid stood in his study, watching brown clouds swirl beyond bulletproof glass. Lena had left before the storm hit. He was strangely relieved. Yusuf appeared in the doorway. "Sir, shall we serve dinner in your quarters?" "No," Zaid said. "Dining room. I'm not hiding." Later, he sat alone at the long table, pushing food around his plate as the storm howled. The fury outside tugged old memories. His mother hunched over sketchbooks, lines of dresses she'd never make after marrying into royalty and shelving her career quietly. She'd returned to drawing near the end. At her funeral, his father muttered, "I wish I'd encouraged her more." Yusuf entered with fresh water. "Your mother would be proud of you, sir," he said softly. "She always believed everyone deserved dignity, staff included." "You knew her well?" Zaid asked. "I served her 15 years, Yusuf replied. "She treated us like extended family." Zaid looked away. "Sometimes I wonder if I've forgotten that." "It's never too late to remember," Yusuf said, then left him alone with the storm. Restless, Zaid wandered the quiet corridors until he reached the darkened ballroom where his engagement banquet had been. Emergency lights cast long shadows over the polished floor. He remembered Mara in that room, Lena's taunts, his own laughter. It hadn't felt cruel then. He told himself it was harmless banter, the kind everyone engaged in. But he'd seen Mara's face afterward, controlled, wounded, fiercely dignified. Later, he'd caught her sketching and dismissed it. Pretty pictures, he'd called them. His mother would have been disgusted. The storm outside raged harder, as if reflecting his discomfort. By morning, the sandstorm passed, leaving the city dusted in fine beige powder. Mara emerged from the shelter exhausted, clutching her trophy. She'd actually won. No storm could erase that fact. Back at her apartment, she showered away grit and collapsed into bed. When she finally woke, sunlight slanted low. Her phone was flooded with messages. Nadia's ecstatic voice notes, Beth asking about follow-up, unknown numbers likely tied to new opportunities. One message stopped her cold. An unlisted number. "Congratulations, MC Atelier. Your work impressed many yesterday, including me. I'd like to commission a gown for an upcoming humanitarian gala. Name your price." Z. Al-Farouk. Mara's blood turned to ice. Zaid wanted her design. For a gala Lena would almost certainly attend. He had no idea the designer he admired was the same maid he'd publicly ridiculed. Accepting could change everything. It could also expose everything. Her thumbs hovered over the screen. She typed, deleted, retyped, deleted again. Finally, she sent, "Thank you for your kind words and interest. I will consider your offer and respond soon. MC Atelier." Noncommittal, safe, temporary. But she knew a new kind of storm was forming. 2 days later, Mara returned to the palace, determined to pretend the showcase never happened. That illusion lasted 3 hours. She was arranging flowers in the gallery when Yusuf approached. "Mara, His Highness requested that you bring tea to his study. You specifically." Her hands faltered among the roses. "Me?" "He asked for you by name," Yusuf confirmed. Panic fluttered in her chest. Did he know? Had he seen photos? She prepared the tray with care, hands trembling, and soon stood outside Zaid's office door. She knocked. "Enter," he called. Zaid sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled, papers scattered, laptop glowing with numbers. He glanced up. "Thank you, Mara. Just set it there," he said, pointing to a side table. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "Actually, yes. Sit for a moment," he said. Her throat tightened. "I should get back to work." "Yusuf knows you're here," he said. "I wanted to ask you something." He studied her. "You sketch, don't you? I saw you in the library. You said you designed once." "I did," she admitted cautiously. "Why did you stop?" he asked. Honesty slipped out before she could catch it. "My studio failed. My biggest client never paid. I lost my space. Cleaning houses was the only way to keep a roof." He listened quietly. "That must have been brutal," he said. "It was necessary," she replied. "Necessary isn't the same as painless," he countered. He poured tea and, to her shock, handed her a cup. "My mother designed before she married," he added, voice dropping. "She gave it up and regretted it deeply. Near the end, she told me surrendering her arty felt like amputating part of her soul." Mara shifted. This softness felt dangerous. "Why are you telling me this, sir?" He looked almost embarrassed. "Because I've been thinking about that night," he said. "The engagement banquet. What I said, it was cruel." He exhaled. "I'm not exactly apologizing, but I'm acknowledging it." "I understand, sir," she murmured. "I doubt you do," he replied quietly. "There's a designer, MC Atelier, who won a competition recently," he continued. "Their work is remarkable, sustainable, emotional, honest, very much what my mother believed fashion should be. I offered a commission for the gala. They haven't accepted yet." He watched her closely. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he heard it. "Maybe they're considering their options," she managed. "Or maybe they don't trust me," he said dryly. "Can't blame them." He waved her toward the door. "Thank you for the tea. And Mara, don't abandon your sketches." That night, in her apartment, she stared at his earlier message. His words from the study replayed, his mother, his regret, his half-apology. Was he sincere or simply intrigued by the mystery? She thought of her gown, of the life she almost lost. She typed, "I accept your commission. I'll create something worthy of your mother's ideals. Thank you for the opportunity. MC Atelier." She hit send before doubt could interfere, unaware that within days her two identities would collide in his palace halls. 1 week until her two lives slammed together. 1 week until Mara Collins had to choose between hiding behind her alias or stepping out fully seen. 7 days until everything she'd rebuilt either solidified or shattered. Wednesday crashed over her like a long brewing storm. The meeting where Prince Zaid would finally meet MC Atelier was set for 7 p.m., an hour after her palace shift ended at 6. She'd decided no more lies. She would walk into that meeting as herself, not as some invented persona. Better to own the story than wait for it to explode. But before she could execute that careful plan, the day veered off script. That morning, Zaid announced a last-minute reception that rippled through the palace like an aftershock. A private preview gala for top donors of his humanitarian foundation moved up to tonight. He wanted to showcase MC Atelier's dress ahead of their meeting. All hands on duty this evening, Yusuf told the staff at briefing, voice grave. Full formal service. His Highness expects perfection. Mara's stomach dropped. She was scheduled to serve at the same event where her alter ego was headlining. After the meeting, she tugged Yusuf aside. "Sir, about tonight," he cut in gently, eyes soft but steady. "Whatever storm you're walking into, you'll manage it, Mara. Trust yourself." Guests were already arriving for logistics. There was no time to explain. By 6, the ballroom glowed like a jewelry box. The same room where she'd once been mocked now shimmered with cream-draped cocktail tables and soft lamplight. A string quartet played near the balcony. Trays of champagne and canapes floated through the crowd. At the center, in a halo of light, stood Mara's burgundy gown on a gold mannequin. A placard read, "Original design by MC Atelier. Preview of commissioned work for the Al Farouk Humanitarian Foundation." From the service entrance, Mara stared, heart racing. She was supposed to be tweaking flower arrangements. But her gaze refused to leave the dress that held her story. "Crazy beautiful, right?" said Jason, a part-time server from Los Angeles, stepping beside her with a grin. "The designer's supposed to show up tonight." "So I've heard," Mara murmured. "Rumor is they came from nothing. Total underdog story. The prince is obsessed, in a good way," Jason added. "Never seen him this hyped over clothes." Someone called him for refills, leaving Mara alone with that pressure. Donors began pouring in. Philanthropists, executives, old money from across continents. Jewelry flashed, cologne and perfume mingled, and then, inevitably, Lena arrived, gliding in a sleek white gown that probably cost more than Mara's original studio ever did. Her entourage flanked her, laughter sharp enough to cut Kristall. "Darling," Lena called to Zaid as he greeted arrivals. "I keep hearing about some secret designer. How cinematic." "You'll meet them soon," he replied, kissing her cheek with cool politeness. Lena drifted toward the center display. Mara pretended to fuss with napkins at a nearby table, ears tuned to every syllable. "So, this is the famous piece," Lena drawled, circling the mannequin. "Charming, very artisan Etsy chic." Her friends giggled on cue. "I think it's breathtaking," said a nearby guest, Jenna Morales, an American fashion journalist Mara recognized from industry blogs. "The sustainability alone is brilliant. Turning scraps into something this polished, that takes serious vision." "Or serious desperation," Lena muttered, loud enough for her circle. Mara's fists tightened around the linen she held. Breathe in, breathe out. This would end tonight, one way or another. At 7 sharp, Zaid stepped onto a small platform near the quartet. The music faded, conversations dimmed. Every head turned his way. "Thank you for joining us," he began, voice smooth and warm, Many of you know the Al-Farouk Humanitarian Foundation grew from my late mother's belief that ART and mercy should walk side by side, that beauty can open doors for compassion. He gestured toward the burgundy gown. This piece embodies everything she taught me. Crafted from materials others threw away, it demanded patience, imagination, and skill. It is a story of transformation, of hidden worth revealed in what the world dismissed. Soft murmurs of appreciation swept the room. Near the kitchen entrance, Mara felt her pulse thunder. The artist behind this work proved that true elegance isn't about titles, Zaid continued. Talent can come from anywhere, if we're willing to see it. He smiled toward the crowd. Tonight, I'm honored to introduce you to the mind behind MC Atelier. Please join me up here. Silence rolled through the ballroom like a wave. Guests glanced around, expecting some impeccably dressed designer to glide forward. Mara couldn't move. Her feet felt cemented. This was the crossroads, and fear welded her in place. MC? Zaid called again, confusion creeping into his tone. Are you with us tonight? A whisper at her elbow made her flinch. Now or never, Yusuf murmured, appearing so quietly she almost gasped. Choose which life you're willing to live. His words sliced through the fog. She thought of Nadia telling her to stand tall, of every insult, every quiet act of defiance. Mara stepped out of the shadows. Crossing the ballroom felt like moving through deep water. Faces blurred, whispers rose, as people recognized the maid from the palace staff. Zaid's eyes widened, shock washing over his features as she approached the stage. She climbed the steps on trembling legs and turned to face the sea of astonished faces. Donors, journalists, staff clustered at the edges. My name is Mara Collins, she said, voice rough. She swallowed and tried again. Stronger. I'm MC Atelier. I created that dress. The room erupted. Cameras fired like strobe lights. Guests leaned toward each other, whispering urgently. Near the centerpiece, Lena's face drained of color. You, she spat, pushing forward. The maid, this has to be some kind of twisted joke. No joke, Jenna called, already recording on her phone. Are you saying you work here as staff? Mara nodded, palms damp but voice steady. I've worked in this palace for nearly 3 years. Before that, I ran a small studio that collapsed. I took cleaning jobs to survive, but I never put down my pencil or my needle. Lena scoffed. This is ridiculous. Zaid, she probably stole the design from a real house. I didn't steal anything, Mara replied, meeting Lena's gaze head on. Every stitch on that gown is mine. The lace came from old palace curtains marked for disposal, the satin from damaged stock, the beads from broken jewelry tossed in staff trash. I turned the things you discarded into something new. How dare you? Lena began. She's telling the truth, Marcus Whitaker called out, stepping into the open. I judged the competition she won. The work is undeniably hand-done. That level of detail can't be faked. I knew there was a story. He glanced at Mara with genuine admiration. I just didn't realize it was this powerful. Zaid finally found his voice. Mara, why didn't you tell me? She turned toward him. For the first time, she looked at him without flinching. If I'd come to you as your maid and claimed to be a designer, she asked quietly, would you have believed me? Or would you have laughed? Like when you joked you'd marry me if I ever fit into that red gown. Silence fell like a curtain. Every person in the room waited. A dozen emotions crossed Zaid's face. Shame, clarity, maybe awe. You're right, he said at last. I wouldn't have believed you. I would have dismissed you. same as before. He turned to the crowd, voice ringing through the ballroom. Tonight, she exposed something crucial, not about her, but about me. I've been blind to the humanity and talent living right under my nose. Wealth does not equal worth. I forgot that. Lena let out a harsh laugh. You're defending her? After she lied and used palace resources for her side hustle? Discarded resources, Yusuf said clearly, stepping into the light. Every staff member straightened. All logged as waste. I can show the records. Even if she had taken more, Jenna added, camera still raised. The real story isn't about scraps, it's about transformation. A woman working 2 jobs, one for rent, one for her dream, turning trash into award-winning art. That's what people will remember. Guests nodded, murmuring. The energy in the room tilted. For the first time, Lena wasn't steering the narrative. This is insane, she hissed. Khalid, are you really going to let them turn your maid into some inspirational mascot? She deceived you. What I commissioned, Zaid said calmly, was skill and imagination. The fact that it came from someone I looked down on, that's my failure, not hers. Lena's carefully constructed composure shattered. She ripped the diamond ring from her finger. Fine, she snapped, throwing it at his feet. The ring bounced and rolled into shadow. Pick the maid over me. When they finish laughing at you, don't come crawling back. She stalked toward the doors, heels striking the marble like gunshots. At the threshold, she spun for one last shot. Enjoy your moment, housemaid. But remember, you'll always be exactly that. A servant who got lucky. Then she vanished into the night, the doors slamming behind her like a period on an old life. For a heartbeat, the ballroom held its breath. Then Jenna started clapping. Another guest joined in, then another, until applause roared through the room. Mara stood on stage, tears streaking her cheeks, wrapped in the sound of strangers recognizing her worth. Zaid remained beside her, not stealing focus, just there. When their eyes met, she didn't see a prince amused at her expense anymore. She saw someone humbled, listening, learning. The rest of the evening blurred, questions, flashes, business cards thrust into her hands. Jenna pulled her aside for an impromptu interview. Marcus introduced her to boutique owners. A fabric supplier offered sustainable textiles at cost. Through it all, Zaid hovered at a respectful distance, close enough if she stumbled, but wise enough not to overshadow her moment. Nearly midnight, the last donor left. Staff began clearing glasses and candles. Mara stood beside the mannequin, staring at the dress that had started an avalanche. Zaid approached slowly, as if afraid she might bolt. Mara, he said quietly, I owe you more than one apology. You sort of already gave me one, she answered, earlier this week. That was a bandage, he replied. Tonight requires stitches. He raked a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less like a prince and more like a man wrestling with himself. What I said at the engagement party, what I implied about your body, your place, it was cruel. I could say I was playing to the audience, but that's cowardice. My mother would have been horrified. He met her eyes firmly. She would have recognized your gift at once. She would have hired you, championed you. Instead, you got me. A man so wrapped in privilege, he forgot to look people in the eye. Mara studied him, seeing the honesty in his discomfort. People can change, she said softly, if they want to. I do, he answered, and I am trying. He gestured toward the gown. What you did with this is more than design. You took my cruelty and turned it into something breathtaking. I didn't do it to prove anything to you, she replied. I know, he said. You did it for yourself. That's why it hit so hard. He took a careful breath. The commission still stands if you want it. Not because of tonight's drama, not for optics. I want you designing for the foundation because what you create embodies what we're supposed to represent. Resilience, dignity, transformation. And because young people we help need to see someone like you succeed. Emotion tightened her throat. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he urged gently. Or say you need time. Just don't tell me no because of my mistakes. Don't let my failures steal your future. She looked at the burgundy dress. Under softer lights, each bead seemed to glow with its own memory. Then she looked back at Zaid and saw not the man who'd laughed at her, but the one trying, imperfectly, to be better. Yes, she whispered, I'll take the commission. But on one condition. His lips quirked. Name it. No special treatment. I work. I earn. I want every door that opens to do so because my work deserves it, not because you're guilty or need a redemption story. He smiled then, an unpolished, genuine grin. Deal, though I should warn you, I'm demanding when it comes to quality. Good, she replied. So am I. He extended his hand. Then I'm honored to be working with you, Miss Collins. She shook it. Call me Mara, she said. The next morning, Dubai's social media feeds erupted. Hashtags like Knox Maid 2 designer and Mara Collins rocketed across platforms. Jenna's article, paired with photos of Mara in her uniform beside Zald on stage, spread faster than anyone anticipated. Support poured in, and venom. Some celebrated her as a symbol of working-class brilliance. Others twisted the story, echoing Lena's narrative. Lena's friends whispered that Mara had trapped Zaid, stolen designs, manipulated the moment. Anonymous accounts called her a climber playing the victim. For every hateful post, 10 messages came from hotel housekeepers, waitresses, janitors, young designers working 2 jobs. I thought no one would take me seriously because of my day job, one wrote. Watching you stand there gave me courage to finally submit my portfolio. Mara read comments in her tiny apartment. Nadia at her side, scrolling. Listen, Nadia said, voice thick. I stitch clothes in a factory all day, then work on my own designs at night. I thought that made me pathetic. Now, I'm proud. Mara wiped her eyes. I wasn't trying to start a movement, she whispered. I just didn't want to drown. Exactly, Nadia replied. You weren't performing bravery. You were surviving. People can feel the difference. A hard knock sounded at the door. A delivery man stood there with an enormous bouquet of roses in deep reds and creams. The card read, For the designer who taught me to see clearly. Thank you for your patience with my learning curve. To future collaborations. Zaid. Nadia peeked over her shoulder and grinned. Oh, he's smooth. It's professional, Mara protested, though her blush betrayed her. Right. That's why the colors match your gown exactly, Nadia teased. The smile faded when Mara opened a message from an unknown number. You stole from the palace. Everyone knows. Enjoy the attention. It'll vanish when the truth comes out, it read. You'll end up with nothing, a friend. Chills crawled up Mara's spine. She handed the phone to Nadia, who scowled. Lena or one of her sycophants, Nadia muttered, trying to scare you. Maybe they should, Mara whispered. Maybe I did cross a line. Those materials technically belong to the palace. Stop, Nadia said firmly. Yusuf logged them as waste. This is spite. Over the next days, lines were drawn. Lena's circle launched a smear campaign, painting Mara as a manipulator. They dragged her failed studio through the mud, framed it as proof she was incompetent. They questioned her training, her right to be taken seriously. The foundation answered differently, not with counterattacks but receipts. They released records showing the materials Mara used were classified as discard. Competition judges publicly vouched for her originality. Photos of her process sketches and in-progress details flooded the Foundation's official channels. Most powerful was Zaid's personal statement. "I was wrong to judge Ms. Collins by her job title instead of her talent. I refuse to repeat that mistake by staying silent now. Her work speaks with clarity. If you can't see it, that blindness is yours, not hers." The quote spread across news sites and fashion feeds. Slowly, public sentiment tipped. People remembered hearing rumors of Lena's behavior with staff. Former employees came forward with stories of her cruelty. Sponsors quietly stepped back from her family's ventures. Within a week, Lena had gone from society darling to example of what unchecked privilege looks like. Watching from her apartment, Mara felt no triumph, only a complicated ache. "I never wanted revenge," she told Nadia. "I just wanted permission to exist fully." 2 weeks after the gala, Zaid's assistant called to schedule their first official design session at a new studio space the Foundation had leased in Mara's name. When she walked in, sunlight flooded broad windows, illuminating cutting tables and pristine machines. Rolls of fabric in every shade lined the walls. On the central table lay a note. "For MC Atelier, may this be the start of your next chapter, the Al Farouk Foundation." Mara stood in the center, slowly turning, hardly breathing. This wasn't a fantasy. This was hers. A second chance she'd stopped daring to imagine. An hour later, Zaid arrived in jeans and an open-collar shirt, looking more like a startup founder than a prince. "Well?" he asked, scanning her face. "What do you think?" "I think I might wake up back on my old sofa," she said, laughing shakily. "Then we better make this very real," he replied. "Show me what you're picturing for the gala piece." They spent hours trading ideas, sketching silhouettes and motifs. He talked about his mother's philosophy, about wanting the gala dress to represent shared humanity, not just opulence. Mara's pencil kept pace with his words. Somewhere between fabric swatches and coffee refills, their roles, Prince and Maid, felt less relevant than artist and ally. When he finally left, he paused at the doorway. "Mara, yeah? Thank you," he said, "for not abandoning your gift, for letting my foundation be part of it, and for believing, at least a little, that people like me can change." After he left, her phone buzzed. "Nadia, how did it go?" Mara looked around the studio. At the table, covered in sketches. At sunlight poured across tools she'd once pawned to pay rent. She typed back, "I think we're both becoming who we were supposed to be." 3 months rolled by. Mornings in the studio, afternoons in meetings, nights sketching until her fingers cramped. Slowly, Mara began to trust that this wasn't temporary. The studio transformed into a sanctuary, walls filling with finished designs and evolving ideas. One wall became a living portfolio, pieces ranging from dramatic gowns to everyday dresses, all echoing her belief in sustainable grace. Center stage, near the main window, stood a dress form draped in silk, the color of desert dunes at dusk. This was the gala commission, nearly finished after weeks of painstaking work. Mara stepped back, eyeing the line of the bodice, the fall of the skirt. The gown blended traditional regional elements with modern lines and ethical materials, every detail intentional. "You're scowling at it again," Nadia said, breezing in with coffee and pastries. She'd officially joined as her partner, running operations while Mara led design. What's wrong now? The neckline embroidery drags the gaze down, Mara sighed. It should guide outward. Nadia studied it. You're probably right, but for the record, it's already stunning. You're allowed to call something finished. Not when it's for Zaid's foundation, Mara replied. It has to be more. He's not waiting to judge you, Nadia said gently. He's in your corner. Mara smiled faintly. The truth was, their meetings had morphed beyond fabric. Tea turned into dinner. Design talk bled into conversations about books, politics, childhood stories. Somewhere along the way, awkwardness had softened into something warmer. Last week, he'd arrived unannounced with a box of rare, sustainable textiles from an Indian co-op. Saw these and thought of you, he'd said, watching her eyes widen. This must have cost a fortune, she'd protested. Consider it foundation R&D, or a gift from someone who likes seeing you light up, he'd replied. Now, alone with Nadia, that memory kept replaying. Earth to Mara, Nadia said, waving a hand. You were doing the thing again. What thing? The thinking about Zaid and forgetting gravity exists thing. You get this soft look. It's adorable. I do not, Mara protested. You absolutely do, Nadia laughed. And for the record, I approve. He's done the work. And he looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking for years. He does not, Mara repeated weakly. Everybody sees it but you two, Nadia said. Now, drink your coffee and finish that gown, so we can tackle the truly critical issue, what you're wearing to the gala when you unveil it. That evening, Mara stayed late, adjusting the embroidery. She'd just finished reworking the beadwork when her phone buzzed. Zaid. Still at the studio? Yes. How did you know? She typed back. Drove by, saw the lights. Can I come up? I've got something to show you. Her pulse quickened. 10 minutes later, he stepped in carrying a slim portfolio case, dressed down but still radiating that quiet authority. He walked straight to the dress and stopped. Mara, he breathed. It's beyond anything I imagined. You haven't even seen it on a body, she said. I don't need to. The idea is already complete. He circled the form slowly. My mother would have adored this, the way you respect heritage while pushing it forward, the fact that sustainability isn't decoration, it's the spine. His voice softened on her name. I wish I could have met her, Mara murmured. She would have seen your spark before anyone, he said. She had a talent for spotting people's hidden gifts. I inherited her wealth, not her instincts. Had to face plant a few times to learn. Maybe that makes what you're learning matter more, Mara replied. Things we earn beat things we're handed. He laughed quietly. Maybe, he set the portfolio on the table. Speaking of earned things, I wanted to show you this. Blueprint spilled out. The foundation's opening a craft training center, he explained. Sewing, metalwork, weaving, carpentry. For kids who grew up like you did. Talent, zero access. Look here. He pointed to a section labeled Designer Mentorship Program. Under Program Lead, her name was printed. Zaid, No, I can't, she stammered. Before you say that, he cut in, stepping closer. You're already doing this. Half your assistants came from service work. You're teaching them skill and self-respect. I'm just giving that work a roof and funding. I don't have a teaching certificate, she protested. You have something better. You've lived this story. You know what it's like to have talent and no doorway. You know what it feels like to be unseen until someone finally looks properly. Her eyes burned. You're not making this easy. Good, he said softly. You don't get to hide anymore. The world needs what you're building. I need it too. Your honesty, your compass. Warmth spread through her chest. Zaid, she whispered, what are we doing? I honestly don't know, he admitted, smile crooked. I just know that every time I leave here, I can't wait to come back. You've changed how I see everything. And somewhere between ridiculing a maid and commissioning a genius, I realized I'd started measuring myself by whether I deserved your respect. She swallowed hard. You do, she said. More each day. He squeezed her hand once before letting go. Think about the program. No rush. Just consider saying yes. After he left, Mara stood alone in the quiet studio, his touch still warming her skin, future possibilities floating around her like dust motes in the lamplight. The humanitarian gala arrived on a perfect, breeze-cooled evening. The venue was an outdoor garden filled with fountains and fairy lights strung between palms. Dress code, black tie. Guest list, heads of state, philanthropists, industry titans. Mara arrived early, wearing a gown she'd designed for herself, a deep emerald that loved her skin. Nadia had insisted on professional hair and makeup. For once, Mara hadn't argued. When she caught her reflection in a mirrored column, it wasn't that she looked different. It was that she finally looked like the woman she'd always imagined in her sketches. The commissioned gown stood on a raised platform under soft spotlights, accompanied by a placard detailing its ethical sourcing and the Foundation's programs. Mara hovered nearby, bracing for questions. As the sun slid down, the garden filled with color and expensive perfume. Marcus was among the first to approach. Miss Collins, he said, eyes bright, you've outdone yourself. The Foundation's lucky you said yes. Thank you, Marcus, she replied. That means more than you know. Brace yourself, he chuckled. Half the industry's lining up to woo you. I'm not looking to be absorbed, she answered. I'm building my own house. Good, he said. We need more of those. Then he stepped aside for the wave of guests eager to meet her, buyers, editors, potential partners, all shattering the walls she'd once believed permanent. An hour later, she spotted Zaid cutting through the crowd. Dressed in formal traditional attire, he looked every inch the prince, but his smile when he saw her was unguarded. You look incredible, he said simply. You're not so bad yourself, she teased. He laughed, the sound sending her pulse skittering. Come with me a minute, he said. There's something I want you to see before the speeches. He led her along a lantern-lit path to a quieter corner of the gardens, away from cameras. Fountain water whispered nearby. Party noise faded into distant sparkle. Remember the night in my ballroom? He asked. When everyone laughed, and I made that disgusting joke? Her chest tightened. Not exactly my favorite throwback, she said. I replay it constantly, he said. Not because I'm proud, but because it was my wake-up call. You stood there with more dignity than I'd earned the right to witness. You didn't scream or break. You just stood. And then you took that pain and did this with it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Mara's heartbeat stuttered. It's not that, he said quickly, cheeks flushing. Not yet, just open it. Inside lay a delicate gold necklace, a slim, needle-shaped pendant tipped with tiny diamonds. It's beautiful, she whispered. A reminder, he said, of the tool you used to stitch your life back together, of every seam that no one saw you sew, of where you started, where you stand, and where you're still going. May I? He asked. She turned, lifting her hair. His fingers brushed her neck as he clasped the chain, sending a shiver down her spine. When she faced him again, his eyes were serious. "There's one more thing," he said quietly. "That night, I said if you could fit into that gown, I'd marry you." Her breath hitched. "Zaid, let me finish," he said. "You didn't shrink for that dress. You outgrew everything it represented. You became so much bigger than my insult." He took her hands in his, voice steady. "So I need to ask something different now. Not as a joke, not to make up for the past, but because over these months, watching you design, teach, stand your ground, I've fallen in love with you." Tears blurred her vision. "Zaid, I'm not asking for a wedding tonight," he said. "There's a minefield between your world and mine. But I am asking if you'll consider building a life with me, not as prince and maid, as partners." "You're asking me to date you," she managed, a watery laugh escaping. He huffed out a nervous chuckle. "When you say it like that, it sounds almost ordinary." "Maybe ordinary is what we need," she said, "after everything not ordinary." She tightened her grip on his hands, heart full. Yes, to all of it, the hard conversations, the public weirdness, the work. Yes. Joy broke across his face. He pulled her into his arms, hugging her like he was afraid to let go. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair, "for not giving up on me when I didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt." "Thank you for finally seeing me," she replied. They stood there until a coordinator called for him over the intercom. When they rejoined the party, fingers intertwined, heads turned, phones lifted, whispers spread. But for the first time, Mara didn't care what narratives were being spun. She'd learned the only story that really mattered was the one she was writing herself. The months that followed were a blur of expansion. Colin's Atelier officially launched as a label. Nadia handled contracts, payroll, chaos. Mara led design and mentorship. Their tiny team grew, staffed almost entirely by women from service and factory backgrounds. The training center opened to packed classes. Twice a week, Mara taught teens and adults to thread needles, read patterns, and dream bigger. Lessons in hemming came with lessons in self-worth. They weren't just learning how to sew, they were learning how to see themselves differently. Zaid doubled down on foundation projects focused on opportunity rather than simple charity, scholarships, small business grants, apprenticeships. Their romantic relationship stayed mostly private, but anyone who saw them together understood. The prince and the former maid had become something solid, something equal. That spring, Yusuf retired after decades of service. Mara and Zaid hosted a celebration in the palace gardens. Speeches, music, laughter. Later, Yusuf pulled Mara aside. "I always knew you were meant for more than polishing silver," he said softly. "I just never imagined I'd get a front row seat." "You helped make this possible," she replied, eyes shining. "Those containers of salmon and roasted vegetables when I was climbing stairs at dawn? That kindness carried me farther than you know." "All I did was open a fridge door," he said. "You did the heavy lifting." 6 months after the gala, Mara stood again in the palace ballroom, the room where so much had begun. This time it was transformed into a high-end runway. Industry insiders filled the rows. Cameras lined platforms. At the center, on the same golden mannequin that once held Lena's dress, stood Mara's original burgundy gown, the competition piece. A plaque labeled it The Promise, crediting MC Atelier and its origin story. One by one, models walked, showcasing her newest collection, suits, dresses, separates, all blending elegance with ethics. Each look whispered a story about resilience, about finding beauty in overlooked places. Backstage, just before her final bow, Zayd appeared, eyes bright with pride. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she answered. "Then there's one more thing," he said, producing a small velvet box, different from the necklaces, heavier with intention. "I know I said I'd wait, but tonight, watching you own this room." He opened it, revealing a simple ring, one perfect diamond on a slim band. "Mara Collins," he said, dropping to one knee amid racks of garments and staff scrambling. "You've taught me that titles mean nothing without purpose, that real wealth is character. You turned my worst moments into fuel for something beautiful. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife, not as a punchline to an old joke, but as the woman I love more fiercely than I know how to express?" Mara looked down at the man who'd once been her tormentor, now her fiercest advocate, at the ring, at the runway where her clothes were still catching light. "Yes," she said, voice ringing with certainty. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger and rose, kissing her with a tenderness that felt like a promise stitched into place. A coordinator burst in. "Miss Collins, you're up in 30 seconds. "Oh." She stopped, grinning. "Should I stall?" "No," Mara laughed. "I'm ready." She walked onto the runway holding Zayd's hand. When the audience saw them, and the ring, the applause was thunderous. Reporters shouted questions about dates and plans and foundation futures. Mara's gaze drifted past them, toward the burgundy gown at center stage. She moved toward it, the crowd quieting as if instinctively. "They once said I'd never fit into that dress," she said, voice carrying easily. "They were right. I wasn't meant to shrink to fit someone else's measurements of worth. I was meant to stand out, to build, to transform, to become exactly who I was designed to be." She looked out at the crowd, Zayd's fingers laced with hers. "This dress is a promise I made to myself, that I'd never again let someone else define my limits. Tonight, I'm making another. To anyone who's been told they're not enough, who's been laughed at for dreaming while wearing a uniform, your story isn't finished. Other people's blindness does not determine your value. Your dreams are not ridiculous. They're a map." The ballroom exploded into applause, flashbulbs popping like distant stars. Near the back, unnoticed by most, a woman stood in plain clothes watching. Lena, thinner now, eyes hollowed. Her family's empire had buckled under scandal. She worked a modest job these days. She watched Mara's joy, Zayd's devotion, the reverence surrounding the gown she once called slum fashion. For a heartbeat, Lena saw what she'd missed, the soul in every stitch. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one, then slipped away into the night. Inside, the celebration burned. Bright. Later, when visitors returned to see the dress that started it all, they would read the banner, proof that dreams have no size limit. Because Mara Collins had shown the world a simple truth: when someone measures you by what you lack, you can either shrink to fit their frame or grow until they have no choice but to finally see you. For many older Americans, Mara's story may feel strangely familiar. You've lived long enough to know how quickly people with power can decide who is worthy and who is invisible. In that glittering Dubai palace, a maid in a worn uniform was mocked for her body and her station. Yet she quietly carried a lifetime of skill, sacrifice, and broken dreams. Much like the talent some of you set aside to raise families, serve your country, or just keep food on the table. Her humiliation could have crushed her. Instead, she chose something our generation understands deeply. You take the hurt, lace up your shoes, and start again, one flight of stairs at a time. Reinvention. In your 30s, 60s, or 80s still begins with a single decision. I am not finished yet. And when Mara finally stood on that stage, no longer just the help, but the designer whose work lifted others, she reminded us that second chances aren't only for the young, they are for anyone willing to turn shame into fuel and private heartbreak into a public blessing. In the end, her greatest victory wasn't the prince or the ring. It was using her hard-won success to open doors for other working hands, proving that dignity, purpose, and love can bloom long after the world has counted you out. Friends, when you hear Mara's journey, from being laughed at in her work uniform to standing proudly as a designer who lifts others up, what part of her story speaks most to your own life? Have you ever set aside a dream for survival, family, or duty, and felt a quiet tug to pick it back up again? I'd love for you to share a memory, a lesson, or even a small step you're ready to take. Please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and leave a comment so we can keep encouraging one another.